Can you even imagine that on your own wedding day, the day that's supposed to be the most beautiful, sacred moment in a young woman's life, it could also become the deepest wound carved into a mother's heart? Picture this. Inside a ballroom glowing with candlelight, with soft music floating in the air and hundreds of eyes fixed on the bride and groom, a mother, Mrs. Eleanor Brooks, 68 years old, walks in wearing a navy blue dress, pressed to perfection. To anyone else, it was just a dress. But to her, it carried every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every lonely year since her husband passed away. Today, for her, wasn't just about her daughter starting a new chapter. It was supposed to be the day she finally felt seen, that her lifetime of struggle hadn't been in vain. But instead of a warm hug, a heartfelt thank you, or even just a seat close enough to her daughter in that once-in-a-lifetime moment, she was pushed to the very back. Seated near the kitchen, beside strangers she had never met, while cold plates of food landed in front of her like an afterthought. Every detail, the indifferent glances, the forced smiles, the tasteless bites stabbed at the fragile hope she still clung to. And then, when her daughter, Charlotte Brooks, raised her glass with a radiant smile before the crowd, Eleanor waited. She waited for her name, for a moment of acknowledgement, for something. But what came out instead froze her blood. Family is the people we choose. Mom, I need you to leave. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to the 68-year-old mother, trembling as she rose from her chair, the very daughter she had raised with sweat, tears, and every ounce of her being, had cast her aside in the moment that should have been shared. But the story didn't end there. Because just when it seemed her dignity would be buried forever, the groom, Nathan Carter, stood up, and what he did next left the entire room in stunned silence. The air in the ballroom froze. The sharp clatter of a spoon hitting the floor echoed like a gunshot, swallowed by the suffocating silence. Eleanor still stood there, her trembling hands clutching a crumpled napkin, her eyes fixed on the floor to escape the hundreds of stares piercing through her. Her whole body felt like stone. And then a sound that pulled everyone back to reality. The scrape of Nathan Carter's chair against the polished floor. The groom stood, in his black suit. His face no longer carried the glow of a joyful newlywed, but the stern resolve of a man about to deliver judgment. Each step was deliberate, steady. As he walked toward the microphone, Charlotte's panic flashed across her face. She grabbed at his hand, whispering urgently, "Nathan, sit down. This is our wedding day." But he didn't turn. He didn't answer. Nathan stood tall before the crowd, his voice cutting through the tension, clear and unwavering. "Before Mrs. Eleanor leaves, there are truths that everyone here deserves to know." A ripple of whispers broke out. Charlotte's face drained of color, her lips trembling. "Nathan, please, don't." But he went on. He repeated the things Charlotte had said about her own mother. That Eleanor was bitter, always complaining, never supportive. That she was a burden, the very reason Charlotte could never be happy. Each word struck Eleanor like a hammer to the chest, because that was how her only daughter had spoken of her for years. But Nathan wasn't finished. From his jacket pocket, he pulled out several folded sheets bank statements. His voice dropped lower, colder, every word slicing like steel. "And here is proof of who the real burden has been. Charlotte has been secretly draining money from her mother's account. Money meant for Eleanor's medicine, for her daily living. But instead, it was squandered on parties, designer dresses, and luxury vacations." Gasps rippled through the room. Guests began whispering, shifting uneasily in their seats. Charlotte stood frozen, her wedding gown suddenly feeling like a costume she no longer deserved to wear. Eleanor gripped the napkin tighter, her heart pounding, then stalling. Nathan turned toward her, his voice softening, thick with emotion. "Mrs. Eleanor, I know the truth. I spoke with your sister, Maya. She told me everything, that you sold your wedding ring just so your daughter could have her gifts today. That you worked yourself to the bone, day and night, to put her through school. That your entire life has been sacrifice, never once for yourself. I want everyone here to understand, you are not a burden. You are a mother who gave everything to create a future for her child." His words rang through the hall. Silence followed. Not a whisper, not a clink of silverware, only a single muffled sob from somewhere in the crowd. Charlotte broke first. Tears streamed down her face as she screamed, "Stop it, Nathan! This is my wedding. Not a trial. But Nathan only shook his head, his eyes heavy with disappointment. Slowly, he slipped the ring from his finger and placed it firmly on the banquet table for all to see. No, Charlotte, this is no longer a wedding. This is the day I finally saw who you truly are, and I cannot marry someone who could be so cruel to her own mother. Gasps and cries filled the air. Phones were lifted, recording the unthinkable. Charlotte collapsed to the floor, her pristine white dress pooling around her like crushed petals. Eleanor still stood, tears streaming down her cheeks, but this time, not only from pain, but from the truth finally being spoken aloud. Her voice trembled, barely above a whisper. After all these years, someone finally sees me. Eleanor stepped backward out of the ballroom. The crystal chandeliers above glared down like 1,000 judging eyes, but she no longer felt fear. Charlotte's sobs echoed behind her, distant, as if from another world. Each heavy step became a declaration. She was no longer the invisible shadow in her daughter's life. The grand doors closed behind her, sealing in the whispers, the pitying stares, the scandal. Outside, the cool Charleston night wrapped around her, soothing the dizziness inside her chest. She lowered herself onto a stone bench by the riverside garden. Moonlight shimmered across the water, pulling back memories of long nights spent working double shifts, wondering how she'd find the money for tuition. For decades, all she ever wanted was for her daughter to grow up grateful enough to come back and embrace her. And tonight, that illusion had shattered before hundreds of watching eyes. A gentle hand touched her shoulder. Maya, her quiet, steadfast sister, stood there. "Ellie, don't cry. She's not worth it," Maya whispered firmly. Eleanor turned, tears streaming down her face. "Did you see it, Maya? The way she hates me?" Maya gripped her sister's hand. "No, Ellie, she doesn't hate you. She's selfish, blind. She's lived her whole life taking from you, never once giving back. And tonight, everyone finally saw it." Eleanor stayed silent, Nathan's words replaying in her mind, words she never dared to speak herself. They weren't just accusations against Charlotte, they were recognition of her, a mother who had sacrificed everything. And in that moment, Eleanor realized her worth could never depend on her daughter's gratitude. Then hurried footsteps. Charlotte appeared, mascara streaking her pale face, her wedding gown stained with dirt. She collapsed at her mother's feet, clutching at her hands. "Mom, please don't leave me. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please, say something." Eleanor looked down at her daughter, clinging desperately. Her heart ached, but her voice was steadier than ever. "Charlotte," she rasped, firm and clear, "I chased you for years, begging you to see me. But today, I've learned something. I don't need to prove myself anymore. I've fulfilled my duty as a mother. But love isn't something you can throw away and pick up again when it suits you." Charlotte wept harder, wrapping her arms around her mother's legs. "I've lost Nathan. I've lost everything. If you leave me too, I'll have nothing." Eleanor closed her eyes, drawing in a deep breath. "No, you haven't lost everything. You still have a chance to change, to become someone better. But that choice isn't mine. It's yours. If you truly want me back in your life, start by facing yourself." Maya helped her sister rise. Eleanor turned away, leaving Charlotte collapsed beneath the moonlight. She walked slowly, but her steps were steady, no longer weighed down by years of guilt. Each footfall echoed like a promise. She had lived her whole life for her daughter. Now, it was time to live for herself. The next morning, pale sunlight filtered through the curtains of Maya's house, waking Eleanor after a night of restless dreams. For the first time in years, she did not rise with the anxious thought of whether her daughter would call, or whether she would need something from her. Instead, there was silence. A peaceful silence, broken only by sparrows chirping outside and the rich smell of fresh coffee drifting in from the kitchen. Maya entered the living room with 2 steaming cups. "Ellie, I know you're still hurting. But yesterday, the whole city saw the truth. They no longer see you as a burden. You stood tall, and now the world knows you're worthy." Eleanor accepted the cup, her hands trembling. She managed a faint smile, but in her eyes flickered a light she hadn't felt in years. In the days that followed, news of the disastrous wedding spread across Charleston. Local papers ran headlines: "Groom cancels wedding after defending mother-in-law." Eleanor's story became the talk of the town. Neighbors, old friends, even strangers reached out not with pity, but with admiration. People whispered encouragement in the grocery store, sent handwritten letters to Maya's doorstep. Some even left flowers on the porch with simple notes. You gave courage to so many of us. One afternoon, while Eleanor sat in the park watching children play, Nathan appeared. Dressed simply, but with the same steady strength in his eyes, he spoke. Mrs. Brooks, I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have let you suffer before I learned the truth. But I also owe you gratitude because you showed me what it means to be a real mother. Tears welled as Eleanor nodded. Thank you, Nathan. Not for ending the wedding, but for showing the world that a mother's love should never be dismissed. Nathan sat beside her. I'm starting a community project for older women abandoned, mistreated, or forgotten by their children. I want you to be part of it, not just to tell your story, but to help them find their strength. The offer pierced through the shadows in Eleanor's mind like a shaft of light. For the first time in years, she felt she could live for something larger beyond a thankless daughter, beyond sacrifice that went unnoticed. She could live to bring hope to other mothers. In the weeks ahead, Eleanor joined the small gatherings Nathan organized. She listened to women share stories of children who left them in nursing homes and never returned, of bank accounts drained by manipulation until nothing remained. Each story echoed inside her, because she saw fragments of herself in them. And then she realized she could do more than listen. At one meeting, Eleanor stood. Her voice trembled, but carried a steel resolve. We don't need to hide in the shadows anymore. We deserve love. We deserve respect, whether or not our children give it to us. And if they don't, then we'll give it to each other. Applause broke out. Tears shone in many eyes, but within them Eleanor saw something greater hope. She knew, at last, she had found her new path. A path where she was no longer just the shadow of her daughter's life, but Eleanor herself, strong, whole, and worthy. 6 months had passed since the wedding fell apart, and Eleanor's life had transformed in ways she had never dared to dream. Maya's little house could no longer contain the gatherings. From just a handful of women, there were now more than 30 who came regularly. They crowded into the living room, spilled onto the porch, even set up plastic chairs in the backyard. Each carried wounds of abandonment, but together, those wounds began to turn into strength. Nathan saw the growth, and one evening spread blueprints across Maya's kitchen table. His voice was alive with excitement. We need a real place for them. A center, a home where older women no longer feel invisible. Ellie, you'll be the one to lead it. You're the heart of this project. Eleanor froze. She, a mother once rejected by her own daughter, was being asked to lead. Doubt rippled through her chest. I'm over 60, Nathan. I've never managed anything beyond my own kitchen. What if I can't do it? Nathan placed a hand on her shoulder, looking her straight in the eye. You raised a daughter with nothing but your own 2 hands. You survived loss, betrayal, humiliation, and you're still standing. If anyone can do this, Mrs. Brooks, it's you. And so, a new journey began. They found an abandoned department store in downtown Charleston. Dust covered the counters, floorboards groaned underfoot, paint peeled from the walls, but to Eleanor, it was holy ground. Every weekend, the women came. Some scrubbing, some painting, some hammering shelves into place. Their laughter mingled with the sound of hammers and brooms, transforming the cold shell into a true home. On opening day, a sign was hung above the entrance, New Dawn Women's Center. Fresh flowers lined the walkway. Dozens of women crowded the hall, tears in their eyes, hope on their faces. Eleanor, in a sea-green dress, stood on a small wooden platform. Her hands trembled as she gripped the microphone, but her voice rose steady and strong. 6 months ago, I thought my life had ended at a wedding. But that day was really a beginning. We cannot choose how others treat us, but we can choose how we treat ourselves. Here, no one is invisible. Here, every woman is seen, respected, and loved. Applause thundered. Many wept openly. Maya wrapped her arms around her sister's shoulders, whispering, "You did it, Ellie." In the months that followed, the center thrived. They opened cooking classes, knitting circles, financial literacy workshops, even support groups. Women who once lived in despair found themselves smiling again. One started a home baking business. Another began journaling her story. Many simply found a new family one that would never dismiss them. One late evening, as Eleanor locked up after a long day, she paused to look at the glowing sign, New Dawn. A quiet joy swelled inside her chest. She was no longer just the mother cast aside. She was a founder, a leader, living proof that even from ruins, a new dawn can rise. Lifting her eyes to the night sky, she whispered, This is the family I've found. A family no one can ever take away. One autumn afternoon, as golden leaves carpeted the front yard of the New Dawn Center, Eleanor was stacking notebooks from the financial literacy class when she heard the door creak open. She looked up and froze. Charlotte, her daughter, stood at the threshold, no longer the radiant bride from months ago. Her face was gaunt. Dark circles rimmed her hollow eyes, her hair hung in tangled strands, and her wrinkled coat made her look a decade older. She stepped in hesitantly, wringing her hands. "Hi, Mom." Her voice was hoarse, trembling. Eleanor set the notebook down, silent. No more tears, no more begging. The silence was Charlotte's to fill. "Mom, I was wrong. I know I hurt you. After the wedding, I lost everything. Nathan left, my friends turned their backs, my job slipped away under the scandal. I have no one, except you." Her voice broke, eyes red with shame. "Please, give me a chance to make things right." Eleanor studied her daughter for a long moment. The image of the baby she once cradled was now a broken woman kneeling before her. Her heart ached, but clarity guided her words. "Charlotte," Eleanor said calmly, firmly, "you say you lost everything, but really, you only lost what you never valued. Did you ever think about what I lost? I lost trust. I lost dignity. I lost the final years of my life waiting for a scrap of love from you. And on your wedding day, you turned me into a spectacle before hundreds of people." Charlotte sobbed harder, clutching her mother's hands. "I regret it so much. I can't live without you." Eleanor pulled her hands away, shaking her head. "No, you can live. But you must learn to live with decency. I am not a lifeline for you to grab every time you sink. If you truly want redemption, start with yourself. Go to therapy. Work. Learn respect. And when you can look me in the eye without lies, then, and only then, I'll consider giving you another chance." The room fell silent. A few women seated in the corner, those who knew Eleanor's story, watched quietly. They understood this moment was bigger than mother and daughter. It was proof that a mother can love, but still set boundaries. Charlotte lowered her head, tears dripping onto the floor. "Mom, I'm scared I can't do it." Eleanor rose, placing a steady hand on her daughter's shoulder. Her voice softened, though it carried steel. "If you don't try, you will lose me forever. But if you dare to change, you won't just win me back, you'll find yourself again." Charlotte lifted her gaze. In her mother's eyes, she saw not only pain, but a fragile thread of hope, and she knew the door had not yet closed. But to open it, she would have to change. Eleanor turned away, calmly resuming her work with the notebooks. She knew reconciliation would be a long road, but for the first time in years, she no longer begged for her daughter's love. Now, she was the one who decided, and that made her feel free. 3 years after that fateful afternoon, Charleston had changed, and so had Eleanor. The New Dawn Center, once a dusty old building, had become a symbol. On the walls hung photographs of women smiling brightly, holding certificates, displaying handmade crafts, or simply sharing a warm cup of tea in the arms of new friends. Every photo told a story of rebirth. Eleanor walked slowly down the bright hallway. Her hair was grayer now, but her eyes shone with peace. She paused at a room where women were practicing yoga. They burst into laughter when a pose went wrong, and the sound stirred her deeply. Once, she believed her daughter's laughter was everything. Now, she had a chorus of laughter born from women who once thought their lives were nothing but tears. Charlotte had changed too. After long months of therapy and volunteering at the center, she learned humility. One winter afternoon, Eleanor saw her daughter in a simple sweater, teaching older women how to use email to reach their families. No longer the proud bride she once was, Charlotte was a woman rebuilding herself, one step at a time. At night, after locking the center's doors, Eleanor often sat on the garden bench, the Ashley River breeze cooling her face. She remembered the old days, the endless night shifts, the tears swallowed in silence, the humiliation of that wedding night. Yet now, when she looked back, she felt only gratitude. Without that painful day, she might never have broken free, never have found herself. One evening, Charlotte sat beside her, not crying, not begging. She simply placed a card in Eleanor's hand, an invitation to the launch of her first book, telling the story of her transformation and the lesson of love. At the bottom, it read, "For my mother, the one who taught me that true love begins with respect." Tears rolled down Eleanor's cheeks, but this time they carried hope, not sorrow. Mother and daughter sat together, letting the quiet night erase the distance between them. Eleanor's story is not just about a broken family mended. It's proof that even when betrayal cuts deepest, even when the ones you love most turn away, you can still find the light. Your worth doesn't depend on whether others acknowledge it. It lies in the strength you nurture, in the courage to rise after being pushed down. And if you're listening now, and you see yourself in her story, in sacrifices unnoticed, in wounds left by those who should have loved you, remember this. You are not invisible. You deserve love. You deserve respect. And you have the right to begin again, no matter your age or your past. So what do you think of Eleanor's choice? In her place, would you walk away to find yourself, or keep holding on to a love already broken? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because the next story might just be the one you need to hear most.